Hey everyone, welcome to Off Road, and I'm Frank Ferraro, your host. Today, our co-host is Andrea Cataneo. Welcome, Andrea.
Hello, Frank. So great to be here again.
Great to see you. I wanted to talk to you about, we did a bunch of shows last season, and a lot of them had to do with crowdfunding, okay? Small companies
Remember,
going on the platforms, doing crowdfunding, and it's really taken off. Some of these platforms are raising millions and millions of dollars. And it's really cool to see these issuers and the whole buzz behind it. But a lot of people don't realize that's just the first stage. What happens is companies then have to file a 15c-211 form. And you, being a securities attorney, would know what that form is. That's the form to actually get your company listed and traded. It gives those opportunities for shareholders to either buy some shares in your company or sell some shares in your company. That's what the capital markets do, and that's why people come down to Wall Street. But people don't really know about that. When we talked about crowdfunding, we just say, oh, go on the site, you can raise money, and it's all good. Guess what? There's another point to that when
there's another step. Back when I first started practicing in the late 90s, you were my go-to market maker. I think to this day, you're the person who I believe has filed more 15c-211s than certainly anyone I know. And you were the person that I would always turn to when I had a private company, whether it was doing a crowdfunding back then, which was a Reg A, and there were not that many being done back then, but a company that was raising money maybe in a Reg D exempt offering and not yet ready to report to the SEC, but looking to have liquidity. So back then it was, okay, what are our options? Trading on the pink sheets. That 15c-211 had to be really gathered, summarized. There were so many components to it, but presented to the predecessor to FINRA, the National Association of Securities Dealers. So going back in history, you were my go-to guy, and I'm so glad we're talking about this because it is not discussed often as a requirement for a company to get that symbol and to have that first level of trade. I've got some questions for you, but you were my guy, and I'm glad we're talking about this.
Fantastic. Glad to have you on.
Let's go back in history a little bit. What got you involved in market making? And what initially drew you into the financial markets?
I graduated from college and got a job on Wall Street. I worked on the American Stock Exchange as a reporter. And a reporter is the person that jots down the trades and then puts it on a thing, and then you'd see the trades go by. So I learned how to report trades right out of college. And then I became a specialist clerk, almost like a market maker. You work for this specialist and you're a clerk and you learn how to handle a book. After that, I went to different brokerage firms, and I was from a broker and different licenses, and you just gravitate into it. Then I got into day trading. I became a SOJ trader, and I had a little office. And what happened was...
But you were distinguished from the day traders of today. You were licensed. So you were someone who had done the homework, passed all of the exams. I just want to make that distinction because
we had one of the first day trading operations when years ago, there was a thing called SOS, Small Order Execution System, and you had to be licensed. So licensed traders could do it, and you had customers and you traded for those customers, and that was day trading back then. It's obviously gotten a lot different now because of online, and we were there for that whole thing.
So much has changed. There have been a lot of regulatory challenges. I think it's important that people recognize the pathways so that they know what to look out for. There's a real advantage to speaking with people who are a little seasoned, who have been around the block, because a lot of issues, especially the ones that regulators have tried to address, sometimes meander back in. So we know what to look for, how to protect people, how to protect companies, and so on. But what would you say some of the biggest regulatory hurdles were for you to overcome when submitting filings for clients?
First of all, you're almost the gatekeeper when it comes to listing these companies, because don't forget, once these companies get listed, it's national. Anybody can go buy their stock. So the one thing that we wanted to do to make it easier with the regulators is just have decent companies come on. And when I say decent companies that have their filings in order, companies that maybe did an SEC filing like an S1, okay, or years ago it was an SB2. They've already gone through the SEC process. So it makes it very easy for an NASD or a FINRA examiner to look at that file and determine whether or not it's trade. They'll have their set of questions, but it makes it a lot easier. It's more transparent, as opposed to a company that doesn't have audited financials, or you see these in the different private placements in the 506s.
Yeah, they're just not, they're not as organized. But you know what you're making me think of? The CFs or the crowdfunding submissions of today, those exempt filings, because a lot of CFs are being done today to raise up to 5 million, audited financials, or less than that without. But these companies do tend to have their facts. They have their documents in order. Haven't you found that? They've done a decent job.
When I went through a couple of the platforms, I saw Dealmaker and Issue. They have great platforms.
Agreed.
And they bring all of that information out. And that's what the companies need. However, even when those companies go into them, market makers got different parameters of what they look for. They want to make sure, A, that these companies are on the up and up. These companies are going to be trading, that they're going to have some kind of trading volume. Because I remember when I was a market maker, we had 100 slots. And so it cost us, we had to put money up, net capital had to come up. So every slot had to be a moneymaker for us. And if it wasn't, we couldn't trade the stock anymore. We could give liquidity as much as we can, and that's what we would do. But it has to be two-way street. So companies have to be able to trade. It's all about getting awareness, getting exposure, having great companies out there. It's a fun thing.
And when you say great company, that resonates with me and the criteria I would look for in a company I believed I could help. We're talking about the fundamentals. It's not just a great story or an invention or really a business model. It's, do you have a history? Has this company really made its way? Does it have good management? Is there people who can execute? And sometimes it's the companies that have an almost routine sounding business, but with phenomenal leadership, that are the ones worth spending time on because of that track record of execution. That might not be something immediately apparent to someone brand new to looking at companies, but to someone like you, I know you recognize those things. That often can translate into a submission to FINRA because you have to really show your belief as a market maker that you can take a market in the stock and that you believe in the company.
Years ago, they had to come to a market maker like me. You didn't have social media. You didn't have all these places where regulators couldn't look for a company and find information about a company. So the market maker and the regulators worked hand in hand. Anytime a regulator needed information on a company, they would come to us. We'd have all the documents. We'd have all the information. We'd give them all the information. Today, everything's out there. So it's a little different. It's a little different. Years ago, the things we had to watch were different today. Today, you have these crowdfunding deals, which are fantastic. And they're straight up companies. They haven't been merged, acquired. These are pure companies and they're really good. Some of them work out, some of them don't. And if they don't, at least they tried. And so that's what a lot of these crowdfunding things are. But market makers see everything. It's not just the crowdfunding deals, reverse mergers and all of that. And that's where the questions really get involved when it comes to the regulators and whatnot.
Yes. There's significant disclosure required. When you think about the regulators who are involved in examining what's going on in the capital markets, it could be FINRA, the Securities and Exchange Commission, when a company is looking to go public. On the national exchanges, it's NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange, American. The impetus is on you as the market maker to gather all of these pieces of information to support that submission. Do you find that's getting more difficult to gather everything that you need? What ethical considerations really help guide your decision disclosure?
And if you're asking a question about ethics and what companies should you trade, that's a big question. And it comes to regulatory hurdles, we go through everything. The whole process is very regulated. And every market maker that's out there has been licensed and gets audited, and it is. But if you're talking about ethics as opposed to trading, or ethics as opposed to working with different companies.
We had just had a few fun conversations about
that. I don't want to underwrite any companies that are going to kill hundreds of thousands of people. No, I'm good. Technically, I'm against that, okay?
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. So what do you think the future of market making is going to be? Things are evolving so much with technology. I'm the executive producer of a show called The Heart of Influence, where I'm often showcasing companies that are building, scaling, growing, and all of those licensed professionals that support them. They're curious about the future of this because taking advantage of the capital markets opens up a whole new level of investment opportunities. So I'm just wondering what you think the future might be.
I think it's going to be more automated. And I think the big trading houses are going to be able to open up their trading floor to the public. And what I mean by that is you see these huge trading profits with Goldman Sachs and all of these companies. How would you like to put money up on their trading desk and get a piece of that and not be licensed? It's called pooling. They do it in crypto. And why can't they do it with American markets? I'd love to put money up on a trading desk and get a piece of every time they trade something. It could be a fund, and every brokerage firm could have outside money coming in. They don't have to have their own capital. They can have outside money coming in, and these people can take portion of the trading desk. That's when you talk about democratization of the market.
Yes.
That's real democratization. Now you're democratizing the market maker.
I see that happening, Frank, if things get more. And I hate overregulation. It just slows things down. That's what the SEC was all about after the crash of 29. It was created to protect the investor from the smoke and mirror pitch. I'm hoping, because I'm seeing this happen with AI, as you are too, and it's so exciting, is that the timeframes are being collapsed to do the due diligence. Like things that used to take days to review now take a minute or less. So I think you're right. I think the future, because of technology, is going to make these things possible, where it's not going to be, a lot of people, it's not that they cringe when they hear crypto, they're scared because it is largely unregulated, and therefore people find it to be potentially risky.
Well, let's talk about, you got to remember something. When I first started trading, and just especially trading over-the-counter stocks, we used to get pink sheets. They were rectangular sheets and yellow sheets for bonds. And if you wanted to do a trade for a broker, you'd have to call up 3 market makers and they'd give you a quote over the phone. This is serious. You have to write it down and then you can execute the trade when you got the best trade price for the customer. It was by hand. When I used to work on the exchange, I would take orders and we'd have a paper thing, buys on one side, sells on the other side. That was the book, and it was in a little slot. There was no computer, okay? So watching this, when we started with the SOs, it was great. We were doing SOs bandits, they used to call. We had a great little office. But guess what? Technology changed, and NASDAQ went from DOS-based to Windows-based. And so in 1994, you can look at quotes on NASDAQ from your home. That's why in 1996, we launched our first online trading program. Which was
You're such a pioneer, Frank. I mean, seriously, you got to write a book.
Yeah, I guess. But that's how technology has changed. Yeah. Now it's at everybody's fingertips. And you mentioned ChatGPT. It's crazy. It's wild.
I think because crowdfunding has become more accepted as a means for companies to access capital markets, that this is a subject that needs to be more talked about, because these companies are not just selling pieces of themselves for no reason. They're looking to sell securities so that investors could at one point have an exit strategy. That's really the bottom line. And to have an exit strategy, the stock has to trade. And how do you get there? And there's so many ways to get there, but this process through FINRA is required even for a company that decides it doesn't want to list, it doesn't want to report. It has to get that approval by a market maker to have a symbol to trade, etc. This is an important subject. If there's more that anyone wants to learn about it, I think we should provide some links and some connections, and happy to discuss further about that, about maybe being interviewed, a company that has something they want to discuss if we think there's a good fit, maybe even coming on my show.
Yeah, you've been doing really good with that show.
We're up to 1,500 episodes, 800 guests, high-level, sophisticated lawyers, financial service providers, investors, accountants, accounting firms, business owners, entrepreneurs looking to up-level. Imagine a virtual networking platform where in an hour, you get to know people in a fun, gamified way. Play-Doh once said.
No, it's great. I love it.
And I will know you better than if we spoke for a year. My little Play-Doh quote. It's fun. People get to know each other meaningfully and then hopefully have an opportunity to do something together. Frank, speaking of doing things together, I'm delighted that we're doing this together because I really enjoy working with you.
I did too. And you know what? We have a lot of different episodes coming up. I'm really looking forward to speaking to the soap lady.
Yes.
Okay? When we talk to her, I want to talk to her because here's a gal that's trying to enter the capital markets. Listen, there's a lot of landmines before you get to those gold mines.
This is a fundamentally strong company that I see in the near future becoming $100 million company. And we'll talk more about it in specifics when we interview Deanna Wallen, but it's a beautiful company that she rolled up her sleeves, created, and 14 locations and growing. So good stuff, and I'll make sure to make that arrangement soon, and she's going to be delighted to have an opportunity to talk a bit about what she's accomplished and what the future looks like.
Yeah, that'll be a great one. But as for any other companies that are listening to the podcast and are in the process of doing a crowdfunding campaign or have done a reverse and need to learn more about filing 15c-211 and getting listed on one of the exchanges, by all means, reach out to either myself or Andrea, and we'd love to talk to you about it and share some ideas.
Going public paths in general, there are so many. So don't feel that there's just one way to get where you'd like to be. There are so many ways to get to a place where you can access the capital markets, and we're just, addressing one of many. So looking forward to more conversations.
Folks, thank you for coming on. Andrea, thank you for being on today. I thought this was a pretty informative show.
Always a pleasure, Frank, and looking forward to more in the future.
Awesome. Thanks.